Hey guys, Steve here from Bloom Audio. With the Stealth, Dan Clark Audio used an array of new technology like metamaterials to create a closed-back headphone that could in a lot of ways compete with open-back headphones. Now, with the Expanse, they're using that same technology, but it's in an open-back headphone. So how does that work? Expanse is the latest headphone from Dan Clark Audio, and it takes the core design and technology of Stealth and makes it open back. So one of the key differentiators from a technology perspective of Stealth was the use of metamaterials. So a metamaterial is basically any man-made synthetic material that exhibits properties not found in nature. So in this case, it was the ability to dampen certain sound frequencies while letting other sound frequencies through. Stealth used this to manage unwanted reflection and other characteristics of a closed-back headphone. With Expanse, they don't have to worry about that, so they're able to use it to just fine-tune the sound and really dial in that tuning that they were looking for without necessarily having to compromise on the driver design. So with all this technological mumbo-jumbo, does Expanse take Dan Clark Audio's sound to the next level? Let's take a closer look. Expanse comes in a pretty nice looking, big, sturdy box. That's nice the way this is like not just a label or a sticker, but it's like a plastic piece. Pretty cool design. So inside, you'll find various things. We got a sticker, certificate of authenticity, quick user guide with various information, safety instructions, instructions on how to store the headphones, regular stuff here. And then this case contains the headphones themselves. We'll open that for a second. And in here, you get cable. Let's go ahead and check out the cable. So, like the Stealth, Expanse comes with the Vivo cable, which is a bigger, thicker, nicer, sort of the upgrade cable from Dan Clark. We've got it here in XLR, which is great for getting those extra balanced power. And then inside the case, we have Expanse, and it expands. Spacer out of here. So as you can see, this is like a pretty cool design. Almost reminds me of the ultra premium version of like a gamer headphone. Very cool. It's also very practical, utilitarian design. A lot of the shape and everything else has to do with the suspension system and the build. Not so much with adding accents for look. So you can see this is open back, but there is a material behind there on the outside of here, even though the headphone is actually open back. And on the inside, you can actually see this is like the metamaterial here, not the driver itself under the cloth. Now, these are really comfortable headphones, really great. It's a memory foam pad with it's a hybrid leather and velour. And the suspension system has no adjustments. It basically just melts right onto your head. So previously, I'd actually been under the impression that you really couldn't fit the cable and the headphones in the case together. No, that spacer is there to help protect the planar drivers from the magnets for long-term storage. So I've been under the impression you couldn't really fit the cable in here, but even with the Vivo cable, it's actually pretty easy. Fits nicely in there. And that's one of the cool things about the Expanse is there aren't a lot of $4,000 headphones that you can just pack away like this and take with you. Now, of course, you're still going to need a pretty powerful amp to run this, but all in all, great headphone, really cool design, super comfortable. If you're into the technical end of things, on Audio Science Review, they had a really good write-up with a number of measurements, charts and graphs and all that stuff on Expanse's performance. And I'll reference that a little bit in my review, though that's not my focus, but I provided a link in the comments so you can check out those measurements. The short version is Expanse's tuning matches up very closely with a Harman neutral target, which is basically a headphone tuning that's designed to match some scientific research on what type of tuning people tend to prefer in headphones. On top of that, it exhibits very low distortion, even when driven hard or potentially EQ'd. And the group delay, which we often perceive as the speed of the headphone, is excellent as well. So you can check out those measurements. And honestly, on paper, it's possible that Expanse is the best technically performing headphone out there right now. But what we're going to be more focused on is the experience of the sound and more of the subjective elements. Now, Expanse is very similarly tuned to Stealth. And while Stealth is an incredible headphone, again, very similar technical capabilities to Expanse, a lot of folks found it to be a little bit dry, felt that it needed a little EQ, or maybe even was preferable on a tube amp to give it a little bit more character. Expanse improves on this partly by virtue of being open back, and partly through just some minor changes into the tuning, particularly in the bass. The mids and treble are quite good. So in the Harman neutral tuning, it doesn't look fully neutral because the mids are pulled back slightly from a little bit of an emphasis into the sub bass and in the treble. But you get great detail, good layering and separation in there. And as you move into the upper mids and the treble, you get that right amount of presence in vocals, good definition there. But the treble doesn't get harsh or sibilant, and it doesn't extend up, super high as some headphones do. There's some roll off as you get into the upper treble with the tuning on Expanse. But again, the bass is where it really all comes together. The bass starts right along this target curve. Really strong sub bass extension that slowly comes down into the mid bass. Well, what Expanse changes about the target is they add this little extra mid bass bump in there. And that's where these headphones really come alive, because it has the great impact and dynamic feeling in the bass. And the way they extend the mid bass comes into those low mids a little bit. It just adds that bit of warmth and emotion into vocals and instruments. Gives it just this more lifelike, more engaging feel. So it just gives it that extra bit of personality. I think that's what Expanse really nails, that Stealth couldn't quite deliver, is that engagement factor, just by basically adding a little bit more presence in that mid bass and low mids. They added a lot of personality to the headphone. The Meze Audio Elite and the Dan Clark Audio Expanse have quite a few things in common. Got maybe 6 or 7 right off the top of my head. But for now, we'll focus on the fact that they're flagship planar magnetic headphones priced right around $4,000. In terms of the build and comfort, both of these headphones are extraordinarily well built, and they're very comfortable to wear. Elite feels slightly comfortable in my hands, and I actually looked it up. It's about 10 grams heavier, so very close in weight. But I also find the fit on Elite to be a little bit more secure. Now, Expanse does have one advantage in the fit, and that's that there's no manual adjustment. This suspension system with the elastic just kind of molds to your head, whereas with Elite, it fits on pretty well on my head with no adjustment, but you might find that you need to use this slider for a little bit of adjustment. Pretty small difference there, as both fit very nicely. You could also have differing opinions on the design. Personally, I like Meze's sort of classical design, while you might prefer the more futuristic look of Expanse. Both very well designed, beautiful, well-built headphones. In terms of the sound, Elite and Expanse give you slightly different takes on a warm, neutral sound. Expanse's bass is focused more on the sub-bass with just a little bit of extra mid-bass we were talking about, while Elite hits harder in the mid-bass and has some sub-bass roll-off. And where Expanse, again, has a little bit of a recession going into the mids, Elite has these fuller, thicker mid-range with a smoother treble up top, but there's a little bit going on in the treble as well, because Elite comes back up for some more air that Expanse doesn't have. So Elite is overall smoother, but there are some aspects of the treble that I think Elite has that Expanse doesn't have as well. So it's sort of mixed in there. Spatially, Expanse gives you, more three-dimensional soundstage, wider, deeper, and more vivid imaging. And where Elite can't quite keep up with that level of vivid imaging, it does provide a more cohesive overall feeling. So the image is still clear, there's still generally good separation, but the blending in the space between the instruments feels stronger on Elite, whereas the sort of very vivid separation and all of that is more of a characteristic of Expanse. Overall, the differences between Elite and Expanse are a lot of nuance. Again, both end up on that sort of warm, neutral end of the spectrum. Expanse with a little more sub-bass, Elite with a little bit more mid-range and mid-bass there. And they both also demonstrate technical excellence. So it's really going to come down to preference, and honestly, whichever way you go, you are going to end up with an incredible pair of headphones. As a flagship headphone, Expanse gets a lot of things right. First, there's the technical aspects where Expanse is one of the best, if not the best, out there right now from a purely technical, on-paper perspective. Then there's the imaging and soundstage, which again, Expanse really nails the stereo image and just a vivid, immersive performance there. And then when it comes to the tuning, Dan Clark Audio really knew when to stick to the curve and when to take a couple liberties there to heighten that engagement factor. So when you put it all together, bottom line is the endgame has a new player. Thanks for watching. You can check out Expanse and a lot of other great headphones at bloomaudio.com. Be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll be back soon with more hi-fi personal audio content.